This is activity 3 from lesson 13, corresponding points in congruent figures. And the first thing the authors want you to do is to label the points in this figure that I've colored in red. And so I've finished, I labeled them, and I also added a point. I added point F on the original figure and point F prime on the congruent or copied figure. And they tell you that these two images are congruent. So before we go on, I wanted to prove that to you, that they are congruent, because it does help answer the question in the end. So if you translate this image over to where D prime covers D, so this is a translation, I just moved it over here, and then if you connect each of the corresponding points, so I connected all the corresponding points, if I find the midpoint of those corresponding points and connect them, it should form the line of reflection. And it does. So the line of reflection is an equal distance between the corresponding points, and it's at a right angle to the path you would take to move from one point to its corresponding points. So this is a reflection of the red figure. That helps you answer the questions. So they ask you to connect, in the first case, connect points B and C, so make line segment BC and also line segment B prime, C prime. And they ask you to measure them and figure out, and you're going to come to the conclusion that they are the same. Well, you already know that they're the same because this is a reflection. This line segment B prime, C prime reflects over the line of reflection to cover line segment BC. Much of this unit has been on proving to you that if you have congruent images or congruent figures, you can prove that by a series of transformations where one image will cover the other image. Well, we did that. We translated this over, we reflected it, so B prime, C prime covers BC, so they are identical, they are congruent, they are equal to each other. Now you can measure them and prove that by measuring. We do it again with line segment A, D, and A prime, D prime. And again, they are congruent, they are equal, they are the same length. And finally, the last line segment is line segment AE and A prime, E prime. So once again, they are all reflections, meaning they are all equal length. They are all corresponding line segments. So go through and measure them and prove that to yourself. And this is more evidence that all of the points in congruent figures correspond and are equal. So the points on the curve, the points on the straight line segments, the points within the area, line segments that move within the area. So A, D, and A prime, D prime, for example. So everything, it corresponds, everything is congruent, and you can see from this line of reflection, every single point, you can move in a perpendicular direction, an equal distance on the other side of the line of reflection, and it will match up, regardless of where it is, in the middle of the figure or on the perimeter, curve or straight lines.